Last week, Demon Slayer's episode 1 broke the internet and Studio Ufotable is eating it all up, and we're ready for episode 2. So let's break that down and compare it to its manga counterpart. And if you haven't seen the latest episode of Demon Slayer: The Swordsmith Village as yet, be warned, there are spoilers ahead. So now that we're caught up to the premise of the story, with Tanjiro traveling to the Swordsmith Village for another sword, we swing right into where we left off with episode 1 and the manga chapter 102. The following episode is titled Yoriichi Type Zero, and it adapted chapters 102 to 105, which follows Tanjiro's mini training arc and learning a bit more about the Mist Hashira Muichiro Tokito, but also about sun breathing and some really great revelations as well. But don't take my word for it. Let's take a look at the episode and see what's been adapted and what's been trained to death. The episode begins at chapter 102, titled Hello There Tokito-san, and begins where we left off with Muichiro arguing with this little boy over something and Tanjiro taking a notice to someone behind them but not being quite sure. The young boy would start to shout at the Hashira that he wasn't giving him the key and would tell him to get away, but Muichiro isn't about to give up and chops the boy in the neck pretty hard if you ask me. Naturally, this infuriates Tanjiro to the point where he has to jump in and confront the Mist Hashira, much like he did with Genya during the final selection arc. In the anime, we see our first two panels skipped here, which Tanjiro's face is a close-up and the other being of Muichiro watching the boy fall. Tanjiro runs over and grabs him by the hand, but the Mist Hashira isn't too fond of this manhandling by someone he doesn't even know, and so he's very much annoyed. I'll count this panel as missing as well, as when Tanjiro ran over, we didn't get a shot of him grabbing Muichiro's hand, but in the manga, it clearly shows. Of course, during the Hashira meeting, he didn't even know the name of a simple bird, and he wasn't paying much attention, so how could he remember Tanjiro? So he decides to give him the same treatment that he did for the little boy and elbows him in the gut, knocking the wind right out of Tanjiro. I did notice that all three of these panels were combined as well. While Tanjiro was incapacitated, Muichiro then reaches for Nezuko. This gets Tanjiro pissed, smacking away the young Hashira's hands. "Bitch, hands off the merchandise," he says in fury. In the manga, we did get a wide shot of him slapping away Muichiro's hand, but in the anime, we only got a close-up. And this is where the anime opening would begin. While Muichiro was distracted, Tanjiro takes the boy from the Hashira, which Muichiro just noticed that he only had the shirt left. I did see that this panel of Muichiro's close-up was removed, and the dialogue was simply added before Tanjiro asked the kid if he was okay. They are still arguing over the key, with the boy saying that he'll never hand it over even if he's tortured, while Muichiro saying that the boy can't handle torture and he doesn't care if it gets broken. All the while saying this is what happens when you mess with the big leagues. You get knocked the fuck out. So shut up and give me the key, I'm tired of all these games. Maybe I didn't say this before, but in the manga, the doll wasn't present in any of the shots. It's only in the anime that it was added. But anyways, Tanjiro isn't just a bystander. He smacks away Muichiro's hand once more and shouts at the Hashira. That's just not right. To abuse a child. I'm calling CPA right now. There were some slight panel rearranging here, where in the manga it showed the boy's face before and after Tanjiro gets smacked. But I'll omit this panel as it didn't really make sense in the anime to show his face twice. Tanjiro does get into a screaming match with the Hashira. All the while from the back, Hananeska is secretly watching the altercation. Muichiro is tired of all the bull and decides to chop Tanjiro. This sends the young Demon Slayer spinning as he loses consciousness, and the Hashira proceeds to take the key. In the manga, we saw these two panels, one of Hananeska stepping out to see Tanjiro getting smacked, and the other a scene of the sky. In the anime, we didn't really get this. Instead, we got an additional scene of Hananeska realizing that Tanjiro is waking up and then runs off before he does. When he comes to, the boy tells him what Muichiro did, taking the key and heading off. The anime did combine these two panels, which has pretty much the same dialogue, all the while adding this scene showing that the doll really did have its own case, which the manga didn't show at all. He does explain to Tanjiro what the argument was about in the first place. You see, he was protecting the mech doll. It's been passed down in his family for years and he didn't want the Hashira to break it. But this is where they hear some clanking and rushes over to see the Mist Hashira in all his glory, taking on the doll with ease. And as usual, the anime turns one manga panel into this pretty much smooth scene of Muichiro and the doll training. When the kid says it's a battle doll, we do get a shot of the doll, and this is where the chapter ends. Chapter 103, titled Yoriichi Type Zero, begins with Tanjiro having a look at the doll and realizing that he's seen the face before in a dream back in episode 1. This panel was of course pushed a bit further after the explanation, but now the Mist Hashira is facing off with the doll. Kotetsu then explains that this doll is from the Sengoku era, which is over 300 years ago. This now dates the period of which Tanjiro's dream was all about, so you all can stop saying that this was Tanjiro's dad or something, as this would be way too early for his time. But anyways, the swordsman which this doll is modeled after was so skilled feel that the doll couldn't keep up, and thus he was modeled with 6 arms. Kotetsu doesn't know who specifically the doll was modeled after. He was arguing with the Mist Hashira because the doll is constructed superbly, and as such, if the Mist Hashira were to break it, no one could fix it anymore, as Kotetsu's family were the ones tasked with fixing it, but his dad died before he got a chance to teach his son, and he barely knows how it works himself. The Mist Hashira seems to be as young as Tanjiro, but much more talented, as he's holding his own against the doll. And now his very obnoxious crow appears out of nowhere to further boost her master's abilities. The only panel I saw here skipped was this one, of them being shocked as they peered behind. This little firecracker is Ginkgo and is the reason why Muichiro can't have pets, as she gets a bit jealous of any other animals. Anyways, she laments how Muichiro is a descendant of sun breathers, which might explain how he got to be a Hashira at such a young age and his talents. The anime does give us another quick shot of Muichiro, but then Tanjiro does say that Muichiro can't use sun breathing, which pisses off his crow, and she goes off on his face. Tanjiro screams that he's seen the doll's face before, but the crow doesn't believe him. After all, there's no way you could have met someone over 300 years ago. But this is where Kotetsu suggests that maybe it's some kind of memory passed on to Tanjiro, which I found very funny, but that can definitely happen in Tanjiro's case. He explains to Tanjiro that this is why many people have abilities that they can never explain and have done things they could never imagine of doing. Now in the manga, I did notice that this panel's imagery had been removed. However, the dialogue itself was kept on, which in that case I won't count this panel as not adapted and we can move on. Tanjiro introduces himself and we finally get the boy's name, Kotetsu, which I've been saying forever since, as it gets a little bit annoying to say boy over and over. By the time he finishes, Muichiro has already broken the doll and shattered its armor. We get a quick rearranging of some panels showing Kotetsu's face before showing a close-up of Yoriichi. This does upset Kotetsu, so he runs off and we skip this panel of a close-up of Tanjiro's face. This would also be the middle of the episode. He runs up a tree and Tanjiro had to go find him and promises to help fix the broken doll due to his distraught state. I bet Tanjiro won't regret that anytime soon. This is where we get a quick scene of Matsuwaimon Tenunji and Ginkgo going at it. Seems the crows don't like each other, but this little bit was skipped in the anime, which isn't too bad as the dialogue between Kotetsu and Tanjiro was kept. We do skip this panel and show their feet instead. While heading over to the doll, they meet up with Muichiro, who shows off his new blade along with the doll's hand. Kotetsu runs off once more and Muichiro tosses his old blade at Tanjiro. "Go toss this away, you damn peasant," he said. But while Muichiro wasn't doing all of this on purpose, his crow was actually a bit of a bitch. It's at this point Tanjiro heads off to Kotetsu, but then we don't get this particular panel of Tanjiro running and finds him sobbing over the now broken doll. We do again skip 2 panels before they try to wake up the doll. These 2 panels of course were combined into one scene, but at first it doesn't seem like the doll seems to be moving. Kotetsu turns the key and this is where the doll starts up again. Kotetsu, with a new fire, now sets the doll on Tanjiro and we get a mini training arc. It seems Kotetsu isn't as nice as we think because he's now out for blood. This is where the chapter would end, but we do get a quick scene of the doll moving towards Tanjiro and him screaming. Chapter 104, aptly titled Kotetsu-san, begins with Kotetsu hyping up Tanjiro for the fight to come, with Tanjiro himself wanting to be as strong as Muichiro or more. In the anime, we start off inside the gears of the doll and Tanjiro running for his life, which is page 2 of the manga. So now it's time to get a good licking, and he sure does get one, I must say. He got defeated in a second and Kotetsu isn't helping. This is where we get the panels of the first page, now showing that he's a little potty mouth and his words cut deep. He was just in mourning for his father's death, so we really didn't notice. Now he's motivated and he's literally got filth coming right out. The anime does add a few more insults for good measure. While we do get this panel pushed back a bit further until the doll attacks, the second scene of Tanjiro taking on the doll was an anime exclusive. But despite this, Kotetsu still continues to help Tanjiro improve. Now this is where we finally get a hefty amount of the content in the manga skipped, pretty much 2 pages worth. That would be about 10 panels, one of which explains why Kotetsu is such a foul mouth. Another of which explaining that Kotetsu knows of another way to train with the doll. Seems the doll does have an interesting settings system. If you turn its fingers, it turns up the level of the doll. Since Tanjiro is so slow to begin with, the settings of the doll were basically at level 1 and giving it wooden sticks as a great way to start him off. Jumping back into the limelight with the manga and anime now aligning, Tanjiro getting smacked in the face with a wooden stick, with Kotetsu instructing him. Kotetsu is not just a potty mouth, he's borderline cruel, not allowing Tanjiro to catch a breath nor food, and if he fails, he doesn't even get water. But he's just a kid, so he can't be forgiven though. I mean, probably, right? But I'd strangle the little shit. He was so cruel to Tanjiro that he had to drink rainwater to survive. He actually came very close to death, slipping into the afterlife. But he was a little too tired to continue crossing the bridge, and so he fell into the river. He saw something at the bottom of the river. I think he was hallucinating. At any rate, he did pick up this sparkly rock, and it was enough to open his eyes and improve his nose. There was a new scent. It's almost like he can smell the future, and I'm not kidding here, he can actually smell the future. That's his new ability, to predict movements of his opponents. However, his body still needs some time to catch up, and he can't accurately brace himself or move fluidly. But as you know, training is a process, apart from nearly breaking his neck, that is. Meanwhile, Kotetsu is still a little potty mouth there on the sidelines, cheering Tanjiro on, but he's grown on me, you know. I don't think he's all that bad. I still would kick him off a cliff. At least he now rewards Tanjiro with food after 7 days of non-stop training. And when he gets back into training, since he has this new ability, it's time to ante up and go full throttle. He's now training to get his body to react faster. He hesitates a bit during the battle, but Kotetsu reassures him that it's perfectly fine to break the damn thing. After all, he wants Tanjiro to break Muichiro even more. So with much needed revenge, he cuts the doll's neck, while Tanjiro breaks his ass bones. But there is a surprise. There's something inside the doll. A sword. Maybe this is what Mitsuri was talking about all along, about the secret weapon, but how could she have known? Maybe this was just a legend passed down, and the true secret was lost in translation. At any rate, this is where the chapter would end. Chapter 105, titled Something Came Out, begins with our two goofballs screaming. It seems that they're shocked that something was actually inside. But hey, it's the name of the chapter, so go figure. But seriously, how did it end up there? The sword seems to be old and rusted. Maybe it's been there for like 300 years. We do skip this particular panel, and Kotetsu himself didn't even know about the sword. This goes back to something he said earlier, that this blade is more than likely stronger than most blades built today, since the craftsmanship is a bit better, and it lasted over 300 years until now. Well, I'm paraphrasing what he said. He was talking about the doll, but we can also put that into context with the sword as well. This is where the episode would end. However, as you might have guessed, the chapter would continue as per usual, as this episode only adapted one page of chapter 105, and the next episode will definitely get a little bit more explanation of what's going on here, but like I said, no spoilers, and we'll stop here for now. A pretty amazing episode, having a mini training arc, and I totally understand why they only adapted 3 manga chapters for this episode, and that comes with no spoilers, so you won't get that out of me. So let's get to the numbers and see what's been adapted and what's been trained to death. Demon Slayer, the Swordsmith Village, episode 2, titled Yoriichi Type Zero, covered 3 manga chapters and 1 page from chapter 105. Each chapter having an average of 19 pages, all adding up to 58 pages. Each page would have an average of around 78 panels, all adding up to 240 panels, with 26 of those being unique or not adapted. This means that only 214 panels were adapted, meaning across all 3 manga chapters, 89.17% was converted, which is pretty good if you ask me. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this episode, and leave me a like on your way out. If you haven't subscribed as yet, please do, as it really helps the channel. If you haven't seen the previous video on Demon Slayer, the Swordsmith Village episode 1, please check it out on your screen right now. And thank you again for joining me. I've been your host, Kyle. Peace out and stay safe out there, V Nation. Bye.